Thank you. My faith does not. Thank you. My faith does not permit same-sex marriages or relations.
A round of applause for all those who asked questions and made observations and contributions. And with that, let's welcome to the microphone His Excellency John Dramani Mahama.
Wow, thank you very much. Very insightful questions. Let me answer them briefly so that we'll have space to ask some more. The first one was Reverend Michael, Catholic Secretariat. Yeah, good to see you again. And it's about the mode of our politics, where a duopoly, a dual, party system, because you have two major parties that dominate the political landscape. So sometimes the narrative becomes a bit too partisan. And I think that the posture of government itself and the president is what determines, how more partisan it becomes. Aside from that, we also need a reorientation of our media. And that is because a lot of the media is private owned, and the way our discussions are, shaped are to bring adversarial political forces to come and discuss everything under the sun. And so you're talking about veterinary medicine, and they go and bring somebody from NDC, somebody from MPP to discuss veterinary medicine and animal health. Every discussion in every talk show is between political adversaries. And that's one of the problems. I mean, we have duopolies in America where there are two major parties, the Republicans and the Democrats. And then in UK we have the Conservatives and Labour. Yet, you don't hear politicians on radio every morning, debating with each other and insulting each other. You can listen to all the talk shows. If there's something to be discussed, they'll bring neutrals, if it has to do with politics, or they'll bring people who have expertise in that particular area of discussion. But unfortunately, the stations seem to get better ratings when people are insulting each other and throwing abuse at each other. And then when it hits the climax and they are virtually at each other's throat, then they will pass their jingle through. It means they're very happy. I'm naming it station. But they'll pass their jingle through, It means that it's really heated in the studio. That is what we have done to ourselves. Unfortunately, the Constitution guarantees media freedom. We can reorient them gradually, but you cannot force them to change their style. And it's not only government that should assist to reorient them. I think that if civil society and all our leaders, take part and point out that, look, this is wrong. We must not always be about politics. We must not always, every discussion in the morning. Indeed, when I was president and I woke up from 6, if I survive till 10 o'clock, then I know the rest of the day will be okay. Because 10 o'clock, every station is discussing how useless you are, how... So, unfortunately, that is the society in which we live. I think that it will change with time, but for the meantime, let's see how it goes. Father Juma, we intend to hold the National Education Dialogue. And so I think that ourselves and the Catholic Church can collaborate, because there's a lot of dysfunction in our educational system. The basic level that should receive a lot of our attention and resources, unfortunately, is being underfunded. The support in terms of books for the students at the basic level, for 5 years now, they haven't got any textbooks. The curriculum has been changed. They've not got new textbooks to be able to follow the curriculum. And the capitation grant that should go to the schools is in arrears for more than 1 year. And so we need to reorient ourselves as to how we pay attention to our educational system. And I think that in that dialogue we can resolve the issue of the management of schools and all that. I remember the MOU I said at the function we held in Tamale, that we're going to add the MOU as an issue for discussion and reach an understanding where all of us can sign onto the MOU. So let's collaborate on the National Education Dialogue with the Catholic Church so that we all come and bring our issues on board, and then we forge a consensus going forward. Reverend Obofo Eka Enyoma Boaedin, I just say, Opesu Sidaya, cement a ton 1 million Ghana cedis per bag, a yedin Parma Obia Odansi for. Osha inflation so called Esro and Neoko Juma was about China and Yoma Ninabo Epeja. Na Nina fi se Yesika Sem Senia Ase Edruno and no Nama and Yoma Abeyasa. A car Abedaya so. Apart from that, and so we share 2021 and 2022. A buying Edge Bosnia Ifri Central Bank to the tune of more than 70 billion cedis. Now, say, economics are your catch or say Sikabe dos will chroma and my inflation cost because we'll be able to scan it because it's too much money chasing too few goods. And no, and so because of the massive injection buying Eje Busian from Bank of Ghana at the toll system. I feel a Bank of Ghana per se a second a free economy Senebeya, Ebema, and Yoma Ebo Ayemre Kakra. And they are introducing a gold coin so that people who have excess money will buy the gold coin so that they can mop up more of the currency from the system. Eno nyina eye nyoma ebeye ye nibriasem yeba. The first thing we are going to concentrate on is stabilizing the economic environment and stabilizing the currency, because osha maybe a dollar ne cedi exchange rate ne be kosro no na bibia bo ekosro nti o se yetimi eye ne betimi ama esika ne ejina fa ho se ne be ya ebema nyoma yemre kakra maye enhyemu a yehyemu yi enye ni twato a yebeshem mehyɛ obo sɛ nyame adom oyame adom na mebedi o mampanya afibia yebenya akwanya ne ese. The banks that were closed, the problem with the banks existed when I was president, and it came as part of the national economic briefs that I used to get and also the security briefs I used to get. But we looked at it multidimensionally, that we needed to do something to save the banks. And so what we did was we gave some liquidity support, and then apart from that, we were passing depositors' guarantee bills and so on and so forth to create a better legislative framework to guide the banks. And the intention was that once we cross the hurdle into the next administration, we will take a decision on how to work it out. It's not rocket science. It's been done in this country before. We had the Financial Sector Adjustment Program, FinSAP, for those of you who remember. And at that time, what the government did was we took all the toxic assets and liabilities off the books of the bank, and we gave it to a body called the Non-Performing Assets Recovery Trust. And then we cleaned up the books of the banks, improved their supervision, while the Non-Performing Assets Recovery Trust went after the liabilities in order to recoup what had been taken, the debts that had been taken off. And it worked. The banks came back to good health and they continued to do their work. When the world financial crisis happened, the Bank of Scotland was in trouble and was in danger of collapsing because of liquidity challenges. What did the Bank of England do? They gave them money and they took equity in the bank and they put Bank of England supervisors in the bank. They worked with the management until the bank recovered and paid the loan that the Bank of England gave gradually. Today, the Bank of Scotland is one of the strongest banks that you have in UK. And so we could have used the same, the same method. What the banks needed to be able to survive would not have exceeded, it's estimated about 9 billion cedis to save them. So government could have advanced that money and then cleaned off the liabilities and taken equity and released the equity back gradually to them as they paid back. Unfortunately, government decided to shut them down. And when they shut them down, together with all the savings and loans companies and all of them, they created a debt of 25 billion. And so you solve a 9 billion problem with a 25 billion CD debt. I mean, nobody does that. And look at the kind of dislocation it caused. A lot of those people, he says, are Uber drivers. I mean, I know one who is a baker. She set up a bakery now. She's a banking professional. And a friend of our family was working in the bank. And so she came to me for support. I bought some ovens for her. And she's baking bread and meat pie and things instead of, doing accounting and what she was doing before. And so it has caused a lot of social dislocation. 2 of my daughter's mates in school had to be withdrawn because their parents, who were both bankers, had lost their jobs and they could no longer afford to pay the fees in the school in which my daughter was. So if you think about the social dislocation it has caused, I think that the decision was hasty. It is part of the reason we're facing this crisis, because that banking sector clean out debt was added onto our liabilities because government guaranteed the deposits. And so if you guarantee the deposits, then you have the obligation to pay for the monies that had been lost as a result. So I would have done it differently, but the reality is that it was done, and now we have to face the crisis for it. I've said that we'll relook at it because what it has done is it has wiped out indigenous participation in our finance and banking sector. These were the banks that were owned by Ghanaians. Most of the banks that are left are foreign-owned banks. And they found themselves in this difficulty because they were the ones lending to small and medium enterprises. And small and medium enterprise lending is the riskiest part of banking. The big banks don't want to do it. And so it's those small Ghanaian banks that were doing it. And that's why they got into trouble. And so we had an obligation to save them. Unfortunately, we didn't. We flushed them down the drain. And you can't go to the Access of this world or the Stanbics of this world as a small baker and go and get the same kind of attention and finance that you would have got from UT Bank or Unibank or one of them. So we're saying that we'll restore Ghanaians' participation in the banking and finance sector, because who owns your banking asset is a national security issue. We must not have our banking sector dominated only by foreign banks. We must have indigenous banks that are owned by Ghanaians. Reverend Benson talked about the unanimous FC and how will Operation Recover all the loot work when the judiciary has been packed, with judges. We have been drawing attention to this. This president has appointed more judges than all the judges appointed by all presidents from independence. No, that's true. From Nkrumah to my administration, if you calculate all the judges appointed, this president has appointed in 8 years more judges than all judges in history. And the appointment of judges is a very crucial thing in every country. In US, they have a limit on the number of justices of the Supreme Court. So everybody is praying that there will be precedent when a vacancy occurs on the Supreme Court so that they can appoint one justice. Unfortunately, there's no cap here in Ghana, and so this president has taken the opportunity to appoint as many judges as possible on the Supreme Court and even the appeal court. We don't have enough appeal courts. I think we have 2 appeal courts, or there was one in Tamale, I hear it's been closed down. And yet we have about more than 50 appeal court judges. And as for high court judges, just yesterday he was swearing in another 21. And it gives the impression that the courts are being packed for exactly the reason you are talking about, that once they appoint the judges, if cases involving accountability for abuse of public office come before the judges, because they appointed them, they would leave them off the hook. We will do our part. We'll let the anti-corruption institutions work. And my trust and belief is that our judges will do the work that they have been appointed to do. They should look at the cases impartially and let justice prevail. After all, if somebody has been involved in wrongdoing, it is our taxpayers' money, including the judges' taxpayers' money, that has been misappropriated. And so he should look at the facts of the case. And if wrongdoing has been done, to do justice the way they should do it. I mean, our judges have security of tenure. You cannot remove them from office. And so they have nothing to fear. It doesn't matter who appointed you. Once you have been appointed, you cannot be removed by any precedent. And so my expectation is that they'll use their conscience and they would use their belief in whatever religion that they are part of to do justice when the cases come before them. I don't want any innocent person jailed, but when the things come, they should look at the facts of the case and judge it accordingly. They say the law is an ass, and so sometimes it will go anywhere you kick it. And so sometimes technicalities and things are used to get people off the hook. But it's my hope and prayer that we would gather the evidence, the anti-corruption institutions will do the investigations, and then when the facts are there, we'll go and put it before the judges, and the rest is left to their discretion. The second one was about Christians participating in politics. I believe more Christians and more people of faith should participate in politics. Prophet Wilson talked about an imam asking all Muslims to vote for a Muslim candidate. I think I saw the video too, and I thought it was most unfortunate because the office we're vying for is not an office that we're being elected to deal with the spiritual. We're being elected to manage the country and manage the citizens of this nation. Yes, we need spiritual guidance, we need prayers and intercession, but the qualification for doing that does not mean that one must be of a certain religion or not. And so if we were appointing a new pope, of course, you must be Catholic to become a pope. If we're appointing a new bishop, you must belong to that church to be a bishop. If we're appointing a new general superintendent for Assemblies of God, you cannot come from anywhere and come and be elected as a general superintendent. If they are electing a new national chief imam, of course, Pastor Wengam cannot go and become a new national chief imam. So you have to elect a Muslim. So we're not electing leaders of religious denominations. We're electing leaders to lead the nation. And so I do think that as much as possible, the discourse should not bring our religion in. Let's look at the people who are offering themselves and let us, based on our assessment of what we think is possible and what they can do, elect the best person to lead and manage this country. And so I'll say what he did was unfortunate, but of course people get very emotive when it gets to issues of politics, and especially when it comes to who becomes the president. With regards to the audit of the register, like I said there at an IPAC meeting, I hope that they'll be able to resolve this, because we think that the Electoral Commission should do its work properly, and that's why we are putting a lot of pressure on them. Look at what happened during the district assembly elections. They told us they were ready. Everything was set for the district assembly elections. On that day, all of us were ready. Remember that on the day of the district assembly elections, half of the country did not vote because the Electoral Commission was not ready. It didn't have the right registers at the right places and all that kind of thing. You saw the commotion that it caused. So part of us voted today and the other part voted tomorrow. Can you imagine if this happens during the presidential elections, that on the day we find out that, you know, things are so disorganized that some parts of the country are not voting or they are late in voting and all that? Can you imagine the chaos it will cause? And so when we try to put Electoral Commission's feet to the fire, we're doing it so that they will sit up and do a good job. 58% of Ghanaians from the Afro-Barometer survey say that they believe in the Electoral Commission. And so they must not betray the trust of that 58% that believe in them. And that's why they must sit up and do the right thing. If you audit a register, it doesn't mean, it doesn't bring any stigma on the Electoral Commission. It's been done before. And I don't know why they're so, up in arms and defensive about having an audit of the register. We should have done this about a month ago when we started calling for it. Would have been done with it. All of us would have put the register behind us and be looking at other things to do with the processes towards the election. Unfortunately, they've kept defending and refusing till now, and so I don't know whether there's still enough time, but I hope that today's meeting would resolve it. National Day of Prayer and Thanksgiving, you would have to decide what to name it yourself. I have given the concept, but the actual organization of the day will be left with the religious leaders to decide. You will name what it is, whether it's a day of reflection or a day of prayer and a retreat or whatever. It will be for you to decide, how you want it to be. But I can assure you that the whole nation, the executive, parliament, the judiciary, everybody would participate so that we give thanks to God and pray for his intercession to continue to bless our nation. Redeemer's Chapel, he talked about the polluted waters. Indeed, waters make cities tourist attractions and very beautiful. And so if you go to many countries, you find that they have a river running through. Unfortunately, Accra doesn't have rivers. Actually, they are streams. And so they are not made for boat riding and things like that. These are streams that pass through the city from the Equapim mountain range. When it rains on the mountain range, the waters, flow towards the sea. When there was no city here, there was no problem, because the Odo stream was there, the Sakumo stream was there, all the streams were there, and they carried water from the mountain to the sea. So what has happened now is a city has imposed itself in the course of those streams between the mountain and the sea. So the water will continue to come because it will continue to rain. But then we have obstructed the path that the streams used to take to go to the sea. And the more that we restrict their channels, the more they will overflow their banks. And so what we've done traditionally is to always desilt and take away the silt, because they bring a lot of silt from the mountain and they deposit it in their in their river beds, in the stream beds as they go towards the sea. So what we've done traditionally is to desilt all they call them primary drains, and then secondary drains and tertiary drains. Unfortunately, it's gotten much worse, because places I knew that never used to flood today are flooding. So it means that the obstruction is becoming worse, or it means also that government is not doing the desilting that it should normally do before the rains come. And so this is something that we have to deal with. We've said in our manifesto that we'll find an engineering solution for it. This has to do with hydrology, and there are hydrological experts who can determine how to deal with it. Sometimes they are able to divert the course of the stream and let it pass areas that are less built up. But these are things that we would look at if God smiles on us. Are we going to tax churches? Absolutely not. The law is that commercial activities of churches are taxed, but the church itself and its revenues, in terms of tithes, in terms of collections, in terms of all that, are not supposed to be taxed, and I don't intend to tax that. But if the church sets up an industry and it is working for profit, then those profits are taxed, but not the revenue of the church itself. Father Christopher says the day of prayer must go with action. I agree with you. You can pray all you like. If you sit in your room and think that God will come and fulfill the prayer, you'll be very disappointed. So as you pray to God, you must take action to make sure that the prayer you're praying is fulfilled. So I agree with you completely. Brain drain, a lot of our people are moving out, and they always do when there's a crisis. Human beings naturally will migrate to places where there's better opportunity. And so you cannot force them not to migrate. What we must do is to solve the crisis in our economy so that we can reverse the brain drain. There was a time when doctors were coming back, other people were coming back when things appeared stable in Ghana. But with the crisis we've gone into, it's accelerated the brain drain again. And so you find people who have a qualification that is useful to us, but go outside and they go to do menial jobs. Somebody is a qualified architect, somebody is qualified in a certain profession, but they go out and they cannot find the kind of jobs for which they trained. And so that becomes a problem. And so we need to fix our economy as quickly as possible. We need to grow our economy so that we can get our people to come back and invest and stay in Ghana. But in the meantime, what I propose is that we can have organized migration. And so and we have it in our manifesto, is that we'll sign agreements with countries. It's been done. Currently, Kenya and Germany have that agreement. We'll sign agreements with countries, and they can give people who are qualified a fixed contract for a certain number of years to go and work and come back. And so it's been done. We will look for countries that are willing to accept some of our people there. In Europe and other parts of the world, because of the low birth rates, they are having labor shortages. And so they are in need of carpenters, skilled carpenters, they are in need of skilled plumbers, they are in need of welders, they are in need of so many other professionals, of which we probably have an excess. And so if we have agreements with them, we can send some masons and carpenters and welders and some health workers, health professionals, teachers and others to go and work on fixed term contracts, at least earn some money, buy a car, be able to come and build a house and improve your life, And so that's one of the things that we will make a part of our Ministry of Employment. It would also have something to do with organized migration. What else? The grant to first year schools, it covers academic fees and is to public tertiary institutions. It's the beginning, and so we are starting with public tertiary institutions. At the secondary level, we intend to bring the private schools in because we have determined that the private schools at the secondary level have capacity. Because of the introduction of the free SHS, a lot of people have migrated from the public schools because of fee paying in the private schools. And so we want to extend the free SHS into the private schools so that we can ease the congestion in the public schools. That will help us to solve the double track. We'll finish the E-blocks that we're building as quickly as possible to create more space, and then we'll bring the private schools in so that they can absorb some of the children, and it will ease the congestion so that we can let all the children go to school together and also vacate at the same time, instead of this double track where they sit at home for 3 months, go to school for 4 weeks, something basa like that. So for the meantime, no fee academic first year is for public schools. As the economy grows and becomes better, we would look at the other private institutions.